Welcome to NFL Daily, where this draft has an appropriate level of pop. I'm Gregg Rosenthal, here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio, alongside my friend, Jourdan Rodrigue of The Athletic, for the last time before the 2025 NFL Draft. We have almost made it, Jourdan.
We're almost there. Thank God.
I was worried this whole time, does this draft have enough pop? Is it as good as some of the previous drafts? I think the answer is no. It's like a little less than most, and yet because I've studied it so much and I feel like I've been more into this draft and that there's more good players like in the top 40, let's say, it's still going to be like a good draft. But we can be honest about it. Maybe not as much pop as some others.
I think it'll be a solid meat and potatoes draft. I said this, I believe, last week on our See You Next Tuesday crew, where some of the receivers that you can get in the second and third round in this draft, even late first, some of the quarterbacks that are going to maybe not be, the flashiest or have that pop, that top 10 pop, they could still be good pros. You're going to get a lot of D tackles in this draft that are solid. You got some really spicy offensive linemen in this draft. It's a meat and potatoes.
The top 10 of the second round, for instance, I think is going to be more exciting and better players than any top of the second round I can remember over the last handful of years. When I did this exercise, we're about to do a mock draft. It is the second mock draft we've done on NFL Daily this season. We did one with Nate Tice. That was what we would do if we were those teams drafting. This is what we think is going to happen. So this is a lot of pressure on us as a tandem because people keep score of this stuff. We're doing this. We're taping this on Tuesday afternoon East Coast time, but not too early in the process. There's going to be a lot of news that comes out.
No trades
after
have
this.
happened yet.
Yeah, and we're not doing any trades, but we're going to try to get it right. So this is a big test for us. So we don't care about the consensus board anymore. We're the stinking consensus board.
Yeah, you've already veered from the premise you texted me.
What?
We think that this is what we think teams are going to do. I'm going to have to remind you of this several times, Greg, because I know as you start to make a case and start to get, wandering eyes for a couple of different prospects, get a couple of different pick points, you're going to want a team to do something.
No,
but it's got to be what you think.
No, we're saying what we
do.
think they're going to do.
Yeah, agreed. I'm just ready to remind you. That's all.
And I think it's important to remember the consensus is always so off that if a guy gets 10 right out of 32, and most of these mock drafts that are out there, there's a lot of agreeing because it's based off of similar information. And for the most part, if you bat 333, that's considered great. So I'm not too worried about what the consensus picks. We should think about it logically, what would make sense. So let's just get going. First on the clock, the Tennessee Titans.
I wonder who it could be.
Look, we got the official chimes.
I know. I love it. It made me feel
I don't think
a
we
little
need
bit
to.
goosebumps.
We can save time later because I think I don't want this show to go too long by just saying Cam Ward. We don't need to go into the logic of it all.
Yeah.
We've been through it all.
It is all but written on the card at this point.
And as I've said, I think his floor is like a Jay Cutler type career. I am really excited to watch Cam Ward play in the NFL. And if I was a Titans fan, I would be really excited about this pick. All right, let's go to number 2. It's the Browns. And again, I don't want any discussion.
I love it so
Let's just go to Travis Hunter.
I know, and it's interesting. You're starting to see little tendrils being placed out and about this time of the week about the Browns and the Giants receiving calls, receiving interest, and that's former great NFL Network host and reporter Peter Schrager, who's now with ESPN, who was reporting that this morning, and that's basically a sign that says, "Hey, open for business if the business is that good," but it should be should go without even saying Travis Hunter.
Right. That's why I'm not worried about us, scoring high, getting these right, because the trades can mess them up. We're assuming the Browns stick and pick. We're assuming every team sticks and pick, which will obviously not happen. But as the process went along, it seems so logical. That does give me hope, though, that we can. I just am rooting for excitement on draft night. I don't want Travis Hunter on the Browns because they're not a great team right now, and they're a cursed franchise, and I don't have faith long-term they'll know how to maximize his career.
And what else?
Right. And I want a fun trade. And heck, I'd love it if my Patriots traded up to 2. I don't think that's going to happen, but I like hearing that we could have some trades in the top 3. All right. You could say the draft starts at 4, but let's at least have the conversation with the Giants. Abdul Carter, the edge, really considered by everyone the best defensive prospect other than Hunter in this class. Shedeur Sanders has been talked about a lot. They've spent a lot of time with him. Tom Pelissero mentioned how Joe Schoen and the Giants spent more time with Shedeur Sanders than any team with any prospect. But we talked about on our last show with Josh Norris, Daboll supposedly doesn't really want him, and I just think it seems unlikely that Shedeur Sanders is going to go 3. Do we agree on Abdul Carter here?
We do.
Okay.
But
yep.
I want to think about the misery of Mr. Mara real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And the angst and anguish we saw on Hard Knocks on his face. John Mara watching all year Saquon Barkley, the guy that they drafted real high before in a previous regime, running his way to a Super Bowl win, to just an electric, absolutely transcendent season. And I just want to throw out there and think about how spicy and fun it could be if the Giants suddenly pivoted from everything we think they're going to do and they take Ashton Jeanty.
Oh my gosh. That would be
I don't think that's going to
crazy.
happen. That's why I'm not picking it. But just think about it. One of my colleagues pointed this out, and this is so true. We have to think about this come draft night when the owner gets involved.
Yes. The reporting is that he's tried not to, but we'll see.
But he didn't get involved, and when they let Saquon out the door, and you could see how much that bothered him all throughout the entire year. Now I'm not picking him here; I'm picking Abdul Carter here.
Okay,
but
let's do it. Hit the
but
chimes.
I want to say how exciting that would be.
It would be absolutely amazing, and we're not allowed to put any wagers out on the draft. We work for the NFL. I think the draft, in terms of people betting on it, is a very strange thing that people bet on. Because, for instance, like a handful of days ago, like Will Campbell was like a -400, -500 favorite to go to the Patriots, which seems insane because no one actually knows. There's nothing else like this in sports where something is looked at as a heavy favorite when really nobody knows anything. So if I was a betting man, and I'm not allowed to be, I would put some combination, if you were allowed to get like exactas, I don't even know how it works, of the Giants getting Carter and Shedeur Sanders. That there's a realistic possibility that Shedeur falls enough that the Giants feel like there's 2 elite prospects in this class, Hunter and Carter. They get one of them, and that they are the team that ends up trading back into the end of the first round. It would take a slide, and we'll see if that happens in our mock or not, but it's obviously possible that Shedeur slides all the way like to the 20s, and then would the Giants be the team that say, hey, now that the price is much lower, can we have our cake and eat it too and have both? But a lot of disagreement about what they're going to do. All right, let's have the Jeanty conversation with the Patriots. Did we actually make that pick, by the way? We did. Okay, so the Patriots are at 4, and I don't buy the Will Campbell buzz, and you're right. It's partly because it's what I don't want them to do. I don't think he's a special prospect. I think if you're worried about him moving inside to guard right off the bat, that's a problem for number 4. I don't think he's a special guy. And when Mike Vrabel talked about at his press conference that he wanted difference makers, that you can't just have a team full of good players, that made me think about Jeanty.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also could be Membu, who I think at least on some boards is viewed as a truly worthy top 5 tackle pick. And people talking about, oh, well, they need a left tackle, not a right tackle. First of all, he could move. And second of all, you really think they're making their long-term first ever pick with Mike Vrabel because of Morgan Moses is a right tackle? No, you could have 2 right tackles and Moses could be a backup and you figure out left tackle later. So I don't buy that. So I'm going to present a few players for you and see what you think. I really think they'll take one of these players. Jeanty, Jalen Walker would be the defensive player I'd throw in, Membu or Campbell. I could be wrong about Campbell, obviously, and I think it'll be one of those 4 players. Where do you go for those 4?
I feel like it would be really poetic for Mike Vrabel with his history to take Campbell, honestly, and that he is a special player and a difference maker. Between Membu and Campbell, those are my 2 picks for the Patriots. But I want to throw out another name, and I know we actually haven't talked about him a lot because he's dealing with the injury. What about Josh Simmons?
At 4.
At 4. I mean, if you like the guy, and remember, Mike Vrabel spent a lot of time with Ohio State.
He did. The other thing he said, and these were the 2 that stuck out to me most. Number 1, the talent, and then number 2, he realized in Tennessee what weight first-round picks carry, especially the first one that he ever made back in Tennessee. that forever they're going to be known as kind of that first pick, and he wants, they want a player that can handle that. Josh Simmons coming off an injury, also kind of looked at as a guy who, how much does he love the game? And so that's a big risk to take up for, but I don't think it's that crazy. I think he could go in the top 10. So
I also think the Patriots are still thinking about center guard, all of that.
Yes. And trading down and maybe taking a Campbell.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah. And center guard, I mean, you got to look at it. It's way too high, but if they're a trade back candidate, a guy like Gray Zabel, for example, could be a fit for them.
Man. I also think Jeanty at 4 makes, whatever the odds are on that, I think it's more likely than the odds say they are, because again, going off what I said, they want difference makers. And I think they would look at, maybe there's only 2 or 3 difference makers in this whole class. They have pick number 4 where the big cliff is, and yet they could take one of those difference makers. I do not think Ramondre Stevenson's contract that he signed previously would impact this pick. So I think they will absolutely consider Jeanty, but ultimately I'm with you, Membu or Campbell. We got to pull rank occasionally with these picks. Let's just go Membu. I want this mock to be a little less consensus-y, I admit. Let's go Membu at 4.
I disagree, but okay.
Okay. I'll give you the next one, that we disagree. We have to agree though. We have to agree on
I actually would have gone Simmons over Membu at that pick. I know.
You just started it by saying Membu or Campbell were your pick.
Right. But as I talked myself into, Simmons, as I talked myself into Simmons at the Ohio State connection, it just sort of dawned on me at that moment with Vrabel.
Okay. A note is made, but the New England Patriots will select Armand Membu.
Okay,
number
sounds
4.
good.
I will.
You know how I am with these things where I'm just like, ooh, you know what, Greg? That is a good argument. I know I'm supposed to argue with you, but
no,
you're saying sounds
we're
good.
doing this. There's no one out there doing it like we're doing it, where it's 2 people that have to agree. And that's why I will kind of go to you and your expertise. You just wrote a great feature on The Athletic about the Jaguars GM James Gladstone. We've talked about him a lot on the show, including last week's show with Jourdan. I recommend everyone check that out. Most fascinating figures. So we don't need to go too deep into Gladstone specifically, but knowing everything you know about him and where the Jaguars are at, what do you think?
I think they'll be really serious about best player available at this pick point. And I think, like you alluded to previously, there are a few genuine transcendent difference makers in this draft, and Ashton Jeanty is one of them. I could see James Gladstone pulling back from the Todd Gurley, Sean McVay days of what that offense, especially with what Liam Cohen's going to do with the heavy play action and marrying the run and the pass together, and someone who's going to be excellent in pass pro, which we know Ashton Jeanty is outstanding there, someone who does all the little things correct, someone who is just a character guy. The one thing that's given me pause is knowing James. I would feel like he's made the joke that he's an offensive lineman in a wide receiver's body, frequently. I would think that he would really want to go offensive line here. But again, you're thinking about the collective and you're thinking about the first pick of this new era. And I think a guy like Ashton Jeanty really makes a lot of sense with all of those characteristics and categories. I will note Tony Boselli was their first pick of the expansion franchise. Now they're executive vice president, offensive lineman. There could be some poetry there if they go offensive line, but I do think it's going to be Jeanty.
Okay. So, because in this scenario, Will Campbell is there. They certainly could take Will Campbell.
Oh, and former Rams people don't care about arm length. So
there you go. That helps.
So that's a fit as well.
That helps. Now they do, in theory, have their tackles signed long-term, but they could play Campbell at guard initially, and who knows if Walker Little's contract that he signs in December is really going to affect things. But yeah, let's go with the Jaguars and Jeanty. I gave you that pick because I agreed with you anyways. But I would have given you. No matter
you agreed with me anyways.
I did. I think that's where they would go there. But that is a tough one. I think these are all extremely unpredictable. I don't think people have a good feel of what the Patriots are going to do. Again, Mason Graham being a heavy favorite to the Jags a few days ago. Nobody really knows. So the Raiders are in an interesting spot. Jeanty is off the board. Membu is off the board. they certainly could take an offensive lineman. You could see them build their team that way. So Will Campbell is an option. I think Jalen Walker for their defense out of Georgia as another edge player, a long-term guy who you can move around a little bit. Mason Graham, I think, out of Michigan is certainly
There's a Michigan connection there, 2 of them.
a possibility there. I don't have a strong take because I like Walker as a player and just think teams are more uniform on him than maybe Campbell and Graham specifically. I lean Walker, but I could be talked out of it.
Yeah, I think that they really are a pass rush priority team. They like that's just the way that they've built in the past. But they've got to address at least some of the positions on this offensive line. And it gets tricky at this pick point because you could go best player available, and depending on the argument within the building, it's a couple of different guys.
There's no way to know. See, from this point through the rest of the round, it's very hard to say anything about best player available because I think you could argue that some of the players that are going to get taken 30th are in the same tier as the players right now, now that we got here.
And I want to point out, I've said this on a previous show, what I genuinely do think the Raiders are going to do is I think they're going to trade back out of this pick unless some transcendent player that we've already mocked elsewhere falls to them. And I think they're going to trade out of this pick, and I think John Spytek's going to use that to stockpile picks in the late first and also in the second, that top of the second area, to get some of these really good offensive linemen and also pick up another receiver. I would not be surprised to see them go receiver this high if they stay there.
Tet McMillan
or Matthew Golden, I think would be.
And I hear you on the trade back. It's easier said than done in this draft, but they are one of the teams that are most likely to be aggressive in trying to do that because, they traded that Geno Smith pick.
And I think that a couple of teams that are right below them, including, and I know this is like cagey, that the Broncos, Raiders, I don't know that they'd actually trade with each other, but also the Saints, for example, too, could be one of those teams trying to get up. There are going to be some really good tight ends that are going to fall, and both of those teams I could see.
Okay, so did we have to stick though? You said the pass rush thing, so it stuck in my mind.
Yeah, so that makes me lean Walker. And the popular picks for the Raiders right now, if the board would fall this way, would be Mason Graham or Walker. I'd probably lean toward Walker.
The Raiders select Jalen Walker. I think it's a good pick. I'm liking how this mock is going. The Jets are on the board. They could certainly use.
I'm going to put Campbell for them.
Really? I just don't think, where's he going to play? They have a pretty good offensive line to me.
Yeah, that's true.
I've thought they were a Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren team potentially throughout. There's some late buzz that Aaron Glenn secondary, they're going to see players a certain way. So there's some Jahdae Barron buzz with them that they could start in the secondary where they have a bigger need and take Jahdae Barron number 7 overall. No one really would surprise me here. I think the chalk pick would probably be Campbell. Would probably be Loveland or Tyler Warren. I'm not sure where they would go specifically. Loveland to me seems a little more traditional and fits like what the Lions did specifically, but Tyler Warren would be a really fun piece, and then you mentioned.
But you need you do want one. I wouldn't say need because that sounds harsh to the player, but you do want a specific plan for Tyler Warren, and I'm just not convinced. We don't know what that offense is going to look like. We don't know.
I think it's going to be like a creative run first offense.
That's why you want Colston Loveland because he blocks his butt off.
He's gonna be a good blocker, and it's not like you don't need receivers in a run first offense. And they have a chasm after Garrett Wilson to who are their second best receivers, whether it's at tight end or so. I would lean Loveland personally. For the Jets, I think that pick would make sense for what they want to do.
Yeah, if we're picking tight end, I'd go Loveland for the Jets over Tyler Warren.
Let's go Colston Loveland, 7th overall pick. Little spicy. There are some injury concerns.
A tight end in the top 10. What could go wrong?
And so we've had a couple guys fall.
I know we have. I'm getting regrouped here.
Will Campbell is still on the board. Tyler Warren is still on the board, and Mason Graham is still on the board.
Yeah, and in mocking him to the Jets, I'm also asserting that he'd have to change positions, which would be a tough thing to do because Olu, they already have.
If you put Campbell.
Yeah.
But
right,
Loveland's
yeah.
there. He's locked in. So we have the Panthers, one of the big mystery teams. I think they would like it if
they're in a great position, by the way.
The board fell this way. So I listened to Josh Norris, who did our podcast. I listened to his mock a little bit because they do a good job collecting things. He always has an in on the Panthers. He's a Panthers fan.
I know he does.
And then he just said he had a hunch that they would take Michael Williams. So I'm going to be the Josh Norris of the situation here because he listens to all the people. And Josh Norris is the Panthers source that I think is very interesting. And then you combine that with hearing more than any other player between Peter Schrager and other people, hey, Michael Williams is probably my top guy who could go higher than anyone else thinks. And I think, the rangy, I don't love his tape. I went back to his junior tape too, or his 2023 tape to see what people liked. I don't totally see it, but he could be a surprise pick. That is just copying Josh Norris. I admit it, but I think that's a good person to copy. Or one of these other guys who are very high on a lot of consensus boards, Campbell, Warren, or Graham. I'll cede the floor to you. I don't really have a hot take.
Dan
here.
Morgan, the former linebacker, their GM. Shaq Thompson is no longer on the team. Obviously, they parted with Frankie Louvu, one of the favorite players of NFL Daily before last season. And I wonder if Jahad Campbell is a fit here.
He absolutely would be another one to throw out there.
That's who, between him and
Michael
Williams, I think I would want to pick Campbell for the Panthers.
Okay, let's go Jahad Campbell. Going early in this class.
I think he's one of those elite special players in this draft class.
And he's hurt, and he might not be ready for the start of the season, which is always a concern. But in this class, I think you're just going to take your favorite player. So,
and the Panthers are not in a huge rush to they need to methodically rebuild this defense. You have to have the right people, the right players. He just seems to be a perfect fit to really be an anchor, a stalwart, a potential captain in this defense that has to be overhauled the way that it has.
I love him. If they do take Michael Williams, just know I believed in you, Josh. Jordan didn't. Let's go Saints, because I would have just copied what Josh did.
I know, Josh, you're listening to this because your mock draft will probably be one of the most accurate of all time, which Gregg got wrong, even though I reminded Gregg that it was of all time.
Okay. Saints, this is the pick I've thought about for the last 24
Oh yeah, I want to let
hours.
you cook on this one here, Gregg. Let's talk about it.
This whole time I thought the Saints that Shedeur Sanders was the floor. Okay. And it was kind of going that direction. Then the Derek Carr news happens, and you hear some things of maybe the Saints weren't even thrilled that okay, now everyone knows that we're in on quarterbacks even more. That it's so funny to think about the evolution of this stuff because literally only a week ago at this time, everyone's like, actually, the Saints are pretty in on quarterbacks. And now cut to 1 week later, everyone's like, actually, the Saints are not in at all on Shedeur Sanders. Jeff Duncan, their longtime reporter, so good, says, one thing I can say confidently is they're not taking Shedeur Sanders. Everyone suddenly come out and said actually, it doesn't seem like the Saints are going to be in on Shedeur Sanders. And people are projecting, okay, his spot then would be with the Steelers, most likely his next spot, actually, that's possible if a team doesn't trade up for him. And I do want to be contrarian, I guess, here and be doesn't it make sense for them to take Shedeur Sanders after all this? Now, I know my friend Adam would probably disagree with me here because if Mason Graham fell to them, that's a player I think they would be very interested in, and that's a great value. Could they try to take Mason Graham here and then come back up for Shedeur Sanders? Sure, that's possible. And so I'm really struggling with it because all of a sudden the consensus is that, no, the Saints aren't going to take Shedeur Sanders at 9, and yet I think it makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels, and I think it would make sense with Kellen Moore, and I think it could give them a little bit of a life raft into the future, a little bit of a hope, a quarterback, Shedeur Sanders.
The thing that I do also pause on is there are two other quarterbacks who I do think make sense with Kellen Moore in terms of that sort of pop gun passing that he likes to do, and that's Tyler Shuck and Kyle McCord, and he'll be available pretty late down the line here. So that's where I'm okay, now Saints Block Party podcast just sent me a hat, so I'm going to go with whatever they're saying on this.
They did send me a hat too. It's a nice hat.
I like it a lot, and I love hats. I'm a hat fisher, as Adam taught me the phrase. And so I am going to go with whatever they say. Ipso facto, I'm going to go with whatever you're saying on this.
Well, I'm not.
You're going to have to make the decision.
I want to put Sanders to the Saints just because I feel like he's not going to land there on any mocks in the end, or almost any. And I just think there's a greater chance of that happening just because it makes too much sense. And I'm going to give the Saints too much credit and say that this is all misdirection, that all this coming out after everyone thought that they were going to take quarterback was misdirection, and that in the end they were in on Sanders. I could totally see an option where in this scenario where they do take Graham and then they come back up for Sanders and then everyone's really happy, kind of like I talked about with the Giants, and they're a team that would be aggressive enough to try to make that happen. But ultimately, I'm leaning Shedeur Sanders. Let's just have some fun.
I'm also not totally out on offensive line for them.
No.
It doesn't make me feel great that Will Campbell and Josh Simmons are dropping the way that they are.
Well, I mean, Simmons is, to be fair, consensus board 24 right now, and that's been rising.
It's because of the injury. It is totally because of the injury, because,
and because no sample size.
Daniel Jeremiah said this. Dane Brugler has said this. If he was able to play a full season, he'd probably be a top 5 pick.
Unless his play decline, because this is all based on
it's
a
projection.
couple.
So is the draft.
No, I know, but it's a little different when you're doing it off 4 stars.
I just don't like that a LSU lineman is falling, and we're talking about the Saints at 9.
Fair. All right, let's take one more pick, and then we'll take a break. The Chicago Bears are
Did you
up.
pick?
Put it on. Let's hit the chime. The Saints are taking Shedeur Sanders. I don't care if we're wrong. We're doing it. The Bears are up in what?
Oh, I know.
Everyone is going to be like, if this happened, oh, what great value. Because you get so convinced that the consensus was right, and then people are so happy when people stop the slide, when the consensus doesn't really know who's good or bad. I don't have a hot take here, but they have a lot of good options.
I have
Will
a very
Campbell's
hot
a good
take.
one.
I have a hot take here.
Mason Graham is a good one, and Tyler Warren is a good one. Where do you go?
The Bears are taking Tyler Warren.
Wow.
Tyler Warren with Ben Johnson.
And so Graham and Campbell slide out of their top 10.
Which, to be fair and to be clear, I don't think will actually happen, because I do not think that the Saints are going to take. Me personally, I don't think the Saints are going to take a quarterback at 9. I think they could still end up with Shedeur if they trade back. But I think that at least one of these 2 offensive linemen, if not 3 offensive linemen, go in the top 12. However, we're going with what we think the teams are going to do. And Ben Johnson and Tyler Warren, to me, is an absolute match made in heaven, because he will have a vision and a design for how to best maximize Tyler Warren. And I really think that this is going to be one of those scenarios where 3 years from now, we're like, how the hell did the rest of the league let Ben Johnson get his hands on Tyler Warren?
Wow. And that would, in this scenario, have 2 tight ends go in the top 10. The Bears, of course, have a useful tight end in Cole Kmet, although he might not be long for the Bears in this scenario. I mean, I think you would stay on the team.
The way that Ben Johnson has also used Penei Sewell in the past, the way that Ben Johnson has worked with some of the multiple tight end packages, I don't think having Cole Kmet, I don't even think even if he had a stud tight end already on the roster, wouldn't think that it would prohibit Ben Johnson from really looking hard at Tyler Warren.
This is why doing this together, you should have a consistent logic throughout of how you're seeing these different teams and players, but instead we're kind of going back and forth, and I think that's going to somehow work out to be the best mock draft ever. Because I think it would make more sense to take, this is where I would stop the slide of Will Campbell. I think they would see him as a guard that could potentially play left tackle and start.
That'd be a great pick.
Start their entire regime with an offensive lineman, which just makes a lot of sense. But we're gonna go with Jordan's pick here, and I think it makes a lot of sense as well. With the 10th pick, the Bears select Tyler Warren. All right, we are through the top 10. We are going to take a quick break, and we will be back with the rest of the picks after this. Back on NFL Daily. I love this show.
Nobody's going to be mad at us.
Nobody is going to be mad that we're the only mock draft in the country that did not put Will Campbell or Mason Graham in the top 10.
Whoops.
Do the 49ers stop the slide of either one of those players? It's interesting because I think of them as a team that is all about traits on the defensive line. I'm really thinking defensive line for them, and yet, they have two real value plays there. Before it felt like this, I was thinking guys like Mykel Williams, if he was available, and he is actually. Shemar Stewart. I forgot that we didn't put him to the Panthers. Shemar Stewart is a possibility. Walter Nolan, like these really traitsy guys who I think could go higher than people think. But in this scenario, Graham and Campbell are both there, who both also kind of make sense for them. What do you think between all of those guys? Mike Green would be another possibility, the Louisville pass rusher.
Yeah, I think because Robert Saleh is back there as DC, they could go inside to outside here. So I think Mason Graham would be the right pick for them.
They certainly need a lot of defensive help, especially on the line inside and outside. I kind of think they sneaky need an offensive lineman too. And Campbell, who knows, maybe could develop and become a left tackle there for the future. But let's go Mason Graham with the 11th overall pick. A guy that gets to the pass.
I love that sound.
With the best defensive line coach in the league. Perhaps, although not as much talent there as we used to. All right, we're to pick 12. The Dallas Cowboys are up. Their local guy, Brian Broaddus, who I think does an awesome job covering the team. Check out his Substack. He does some podcasts. I think they are looking at what everyone's thinking they're looking at, which is wide receiver. In this scenario, Tetairoa McMillan is still available. Again, Will Campbell, like I'm going to keep mentioning them until he gets taken. Like they're not a crazy Will Campbell team, but they do have, Tyler Smith is more of a left guard. If you saw him as a left tackle, that's possible. Matthew Golden is another possible pick here. Daniel Jeremiah is number one local guy at Texas. I lean Tet. I
lean Golden. Actually, because I think Matthew Golden complements CeeDee Lamb pretty well.
I think they both do.
Well, I think they both do, but I also think that it just kind of, I think it's a matter of preference who your 1-2 is. For me, I tend to agree with DJ on this. I go Matthew Golden to Tet.
I do too, but I put Tet to the Cowboys. I guess I would just. To me, Golden maybe is like he's a much lesser version of CD, but the kind of the jack of all trades, can do it all, move them all around, separate. Whereas Tet is that clear outside guy, which to me makes more sense. And Broaddus, I'm just leaning towards the local guy who I trust the most, and he's been saying he really thinks Tet is the pick. So
let's go with what he says then.
Let's do it.
I love a local beat writer shout out.
Okay, we will go Tetairoa McMillan, T-Mac. He wants to be called T-Mac, so I gotta start calling him T-Mac. At 12. All right, let's just stop the slide. We can be quick on this. If Will Campbell falls to the Dolphins, I don't think there's any conversation.
That's a no-brainer.
I don't think there's any conversation.
That's a no-brainer. And also, Miami needs everything.
Yes, they really do, but they really need interior offensive line. I guess you could say that they have Patrick Paul at left tackle or whatever, and that's fine. Then you start Campbell at left guard. It doesn't matter. Let's take
this. Could also be a sneaky moment to watch for a potential Jalen Ramsey trade as well.
Yes, good call. And I think they could be in on Jahdae Barron here or Will Johnson. We didn't really mention it, but I think they were a little heartbroken. They lost Calais Campbell, so they suddenly lost Teron Armstead and Calais Campbell. I think they thought they were getting Campbell back. They could be a Ken Grant team too. I think he's another one of those guys that if I was a betting man, I would go on he's going to get taken earlier than whatever the consensus is. And I think this is his first spot where it's pretty realistic that he could go, but let's go Will Campbell because of how this board fell. Now the Colts are up, and in most drafts, they take a tight end, but we had our tight ends go very early. Mykel Williams is there. They do like toolsy, traitsy guys. I think they could definitely use a pass rusher. I think they could take an offensive lineman. This could be the first spot where you see a Gray Zabel. Their GM said on Tuesday that, hey, yeah, we're going to be wanting to take a pass-catching tight end at some point, which set off my alarm bells that he doesn't want one in the first round. Why would he say that?
At some point.
No, but just why would he say that publicly? That, we're trying to let people think that we're taking it felt very Pete Carroll talking about Ashton Jeanty to me, where it was almost too obvious that he was trying to make people think he's doing that when they're actually not.
I think that Josh Norris mentioned this. I think they could be potentially looking to trade for a tight end. as well. I mean, Dallas Goedert potentially being available. They do need one, and that's why it's been such a popular mock to them. But they also are one of those teams that needs a lot of help in a lot of different areas as well.
I think they are going to look at linemen. They are big on athletic traits, probably more than any team in the entire NFL. And so with the players available here that they could take, Gray Zabel makes a lot of sense. He tested off the charts. And then Michael Williams, I'm going to keep mentioning him because I do think the idea that he's going to go a little earlier than people think makes sense to me.
He's also 20. He's also only 20, so that's also another reason why I think he's going to go
very
higher.
much a traits guy. So I'd like to go Zabel or Michael Williams. I'll let you make the choice.
I'm going to go Michael Williams, but I want to. This is a little maybe potentially newsy nugget. I do think Gray Zabel is going to go higher than a lot of people think he is.
Yeah, he's another one, and I would expect that number to move up in the next couple of days. But we're taking Michael Williams for the Colts, and I think this is where his draft sort of starts, Miami and Indianapolis. It wouldn't shock me if he goes to either one of those teams. All right, the Falcons are up. We just took a pass rusher off the board.
Derek Harmon.
Really? You feel strong.
Interior guy. Raheem Morris was really high on some previous Oregon players. Got a really long look at him back when he was working with the scouts in Los Angeles. And obviously with, no Grady Jarrett anymore, you're really looking at somebody who's going to be a long time sort of stalwart in the middle. And I think Derek Harmon has all the tools, all of the traits. He's consistent. He's always around the quarterback. Mm-hmm. I think that would be an important pick for them.
Okay, let's just roll with that one. She's feeling strong on this one. I think if we're feeling hot on some of them, let's do it. They could certainly take a cornerback there. Cornerbacks have fallen in this class.
Yeah.
Now, that's not shocking because, to me, this cornerback class probably not as good at the top as last year's. And last year, no one went in the 20s. You could
see a run.
Right.
Yeah.
No one went in the top 20. Now, that said, it wouldn't shock me if they took a cornerback there. It wouldn't shock me if they took Walter Nolan there because I've heard, Albert Breer is reporting the 49ers are strongly considering him at 11. He's another guy, if you've listened over the last week. To me, he could. I think some teams will have him as the number 2 defensive player on this board behind Travis Hunter. I just think some teams are going to see major upside and he's not going to slip too far, which makes him a candidate for the Cardinals because they need everything. They could certainly use a defensive tackle. I like Jahad Campbell to them, but he's already taken. I like Will Johnson to them. I like Jahdae Barron to them. Between Will Johnson, Jahdae Barron, and who did I just say? My guy, Walter Nolan. I think all of them make sense.
I do too, and I kind of want to think too about what this defense is emerging into. They went from like the walk around defense. I think Patrick Claybon called them the search bar,
right?
Which was a great nickname. But they're malleable, they're fluid. Sometimes they play like with the 3 safety looks. They like to do different things with some of those shells that we've seen people come out of the Fangio tree doing with Jonathan Gannon. I would imagine that the pick here is defense, but I would say I'd look at maybe a corner for them here, like a Will Johnson.
Yeah, I think I'm going to maybe have them take Nolan, and we're going to just be spicy throughout. I'll push in here, although I'm torn. I like the idea of Will Johnson as well. The one thing I would say about their secondary, because I've heard people talk about it, and I do think it is need, but I do think it's a lot better than people realize. I don't think people think of Max Melton and Garrett Williams as core young pieces, and they absolutely are. That's a second-round pick from last year, Max Melton, who showed a lot at the end of last year, and Garrett Williams, who is one of the better young nickelbacks in the league. And I know Cardinals fans are out there, I think, screaming at some of the national guys saying how thin their secondary is. So you have those 2 guys, you have Budda Baker. Doesn't mean they don't need another cornerback, though. They're pretty thin after those 2 spots, so you need a third corner. Will Johnson does make a lot of sense there. Man, did I just talk myself out of Walter Nolan, who I kind of want him to go early in this mock to represent that I think he will go earlier, but he hasn't made perfect sense yet. And I actually convinced myself, and your argument about Will Johnson convinced me as I went through it. Like, yeah, they have a good secondary, but you need even more players.
Always make it better.
Let's go Will Johnson.
Calais Campbell back with the Arizona Cardinals, by the way.
Love that. Love that pick. Pick up by them. Okay, the Bengals are here. And you've heard some Harmon to them, but he's off the board. You've heard some Jahad Campbell to them, but he's off the board. So I don't think it's fallen exactly how they want. I think this is a spot where you would think about Kelvin Banks, the tackle from Texas, kind of fits the profile of the type of teams they like to draft. I think they need to get better on the offensive line. I think they could be a potential Walter Nolan team. I think I want to just stick them here. What do you feel?
Do you want to, Greg, or per our argument at the top, do you think the Cincinnati Bengals will?
So they have, knowing that the reporting around them is defensive tackle, they were in linebacker. I don't think if Jahad Campbell is there is another linebacker that you even think about. I do think they take traitsy, toolsy guys from big programs. Do we count Ole Miss as a big program now? I think so. An SEC school they really draft out of those schools. So to me, he's a better version of Harmon. They might not have seen it that way, but I do think that he would be in that same tier, that if that's a guy that they were looking at, it would make sense. But Kelvin Banks could also make sense if you like that.
Mike Green, in terms of tools and explosiveness, really makes sense to the Bengals in my mind, especially as the situation with Trey Hendrickson remains very fluid. And in my opinion, they are an organization that will think they've already done what they need to do on the offensive side by getting those receivers taken care of. Right or wrong, I believe that's what they'll think. And they really need to address the defense. You don't fire a coach and then not give the new guy anybody to work with to improve that defense.
So they seem like a team that would not care about Mike Green's off-field concerns. It does make sense. I could see Mike Green falling in this draft because he's a unique prospect in terms of the level of play that he was at Marshall. How he wins, is that going to translate? And then the off-field stuff, that he could go anywhere from like the middle of the first round like this to just falling out of the first round. It wouldn't surprise me. But you made a compelling argument. Let's go Mike Green, Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, part of that is I was thinking about our next pick. And
we got you distracted thinking about the Seahawks.
I was thinking about the offensive lineman that will be available to them there. Tyler Booker as a guard is certainly an option. But now that Kelvin Banks fell to them, I do think that they would I think he's going to go in the end pretty high. I think Tyler Booker is going to go pretty high too. So I think it'll be between one of those two. But they certainly could use a right tackle if that's where they want to put Kelvin Banks. They could put him at left tackle. Are they going to sign Charles Cross long term? I think they will, but Banks could also be a guard at the next level. Either way, they need to improve the offensive line. So I think it's one of those two guys.
I would not rule out a long look at Gray Zabel.
Oh, yes, that's it. It slipped my mind that he was available. That's it. That's the pick. It's so obvious. Gray Zabel. Man, Seahawks fans would be excited about that. Like a toolsy, high upside guy with position flexibility, probably starts out as a guard. A lot of teams, I think, see his best position at guard. He could play as a center, but you just don't know. So that's something where you get him in the building, you figure it out. Let's go to the Bucs at number 19.
I would have loved Jahad Campbell in this Todd Bowles defense, by the way, but he's already gone.
He is gone. My guy Nolan, I'm just going to keep mentioning him, is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Golden still hasn't been taken, and I think the Seahawks would have considered him at number 18. Certainly, the Bucs probably not considering him at number 19. I think running back could be a surprise here. When I saw that Adam Schefter wrote that Rachaad White is available for a possible trade, I thought, that's interesting. They seem like a running back team now, but it could be a later running back team. You have Bucky Irving already in place. Ezeraku has been a popular pick to them. That's probably where I lean for them. I think he's a unique pass rusher. They need one. I think it's a bit of a fall at the edge position after him personally, and maybe they would see it that way, that they don't want to wait all the way till the end of round 2.
Yeah, but I also would not actually, because Chris Godwin, his recovery timeline is so long, I actually would not rule out Matthew Golden here. And you're looking at a future, hopefully a long time from now, because I love watching Mike Evans play, but you are looking at some point a world without Mike Evans where you've still got a quarterback under contract.
That's a really tough one, team building wise. And I don't have a strong take. I think if they really saw Golden as a tier above an Ezeraku type, they would do it. They are a team, I think, that wants to draft linemen. Ultimately, I think they've just invested so much money in Evans, Godwin, and Jalen McMillan with a high pick last year, who looks like a good player, that I'm gonna push my cards in on Donovan as a Rocket.
I think that's a good pick, and I think he would really thrive in this defense too.
Love it. The Broncos, in our scenario, we're not allowed to trade up. In this scenario, they are pumped because I think the players available are guys that they could absolutely trade up and take and make it look like we got this pick right anyways, where they take Matthew Golden or Omarion Hampton or Travion Henderson at number 12 overall because they traded up. We've got them at 20. I think they're all strong candidates for the Broncos here. Man, I've been locked in at running back so much, but Golden being on the board, how the draft fell, what do you think?
I feel like we have to give Sean Payton Matthew Golden. I mean, that just seems like joy.
I think he loves Ashton Jeanty.
We might see Sean Payton smile.
Yes, I think he loves Ashton Jeanty. I think they'll look at this running back class and think, ultimately, even though they would have been happy with Hampton or Travion Henderson, whoever it would have been at 20, I don't know how they're feeling, but I love Hampton. I think they'll look at the value as a wide receiver and think, man, we can get a running back later in this deep class. Matthew Golden is the pick. And so we got to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This could be a Shedeur team.
You've already given the Saints Shedeur, so.
I know. They are a very hard team, actually, to mock if Shedeur is out there. Some possibilities I would throw out. Walter Nolan, as a pass rushing defensive lineman, someone that they want to develop. Tyleik Williams, I'm going to throw him out there. Not a name I'm seeing a ton in the first round. More of a run stuffer, but everything I know about him, man, they love nose tackles. Where is he on the consensus board? Up to 43, which I feel like is about as high as he's been. I think he could be a surprise first round pick. When you have a 350-pound man, Kenneth Grant would be another strong candidate. I kind of forgot that we haven't taken Kenneth Grant here. There's some good picks, or Mika Ibuka at wide receiver in a scenario where they trade out. This is why, man, this is a good part of the draft to have. Like, is this pick really any worse than the Patriots at 4? I personally don't think so. Like the players that they're choosing from. I think it's like kind of the same tier of players. And you're here at 21 and you're filling a need with pretty good players. Out of the ones I mentioned, who do you like?
Can I say something crazy?
Sure.
Permission to say something crazy?
Permission granted.
What if they still take a quarterback?
Oh.
Tyler Shuck or Jackson Dart?
Man, I am not. You are not putting Tyler Shuck in this first round.
You hate how old he is.
I don't. I hate that he seems to completely crumble against pressures. I'm kind of shocked how much love he's getting. And maybe it's because he's the type of guy I feel like I've been wrong about so much in the past, where it's like you see all the pro things. He seems like such a pro quarterback until the moment pressure is around him. And then he seems like he has no pocket presence whatsoever. Like none.
I'm just saying, I don't think we can rule out if this is a potential Shedeur Sanders team, and Mike Tomlin's out here saying, or Omar Khan's out here saying, hey, we're probably going to go into camp with 4 quarterbacks. How we get to that, I'm not sure. I would not rule out them taking one of these other quarterbacks. If Shedeur's gone, one of these other quarterbacks at 21. I would not actually mind Jackson Dart here.
I think the Steelers would be more likely. But I agree with your point overall. I think they'd be
not that crazy.
More likely to view these guys in similar ways. Maybe they do like Tyler Shuck and feel like you can wait till round 2 and see who is there for them at round 2.
But the Browns are sitting there at the top,
and the Giants are as well.
And the Giants are as well.
Yes.
And neither of them have quarterbacks. So that's where I'm saying at 21. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, they look and they've been playing this waiting game, and Rooney is starting to get impatient because he's only willing to wait to a point. They've been playing this game with Aaron Rodgers for weeks and months. They don't even really seem to know, what day he wants to arrive or if he's going to be there or not. They're going to look at those guys below them that are sitting just, 11 picks away.
I think they were burned by Kenny Pickett. And I ultimately go back to think what's the most logical thing, and what everyone said about this draft class the whole time. Ultimately, people aren't in love with these quarterbacks. And I think that's going to include the Steelers, who would take Jackson Dart potentially in round 2, but not this early. I'm standing on the table for alignment.
Polling rank.
Yes,
go for it.
Whether it's Kenneth, you can do it on a future one. I owe you. A Kenneth Grant, I think, would make a lot of sense here.
Let's do it.
Let's go Kenneth Grant. To me, he's got a lot of juice for a big guy. Both him and Tyleik Williams as a run stopper, I think makes a lot of sense. So let's take one more break, and we will finish our mock right after this. I'm telling you, the 20s are where you want to be in this class. There's so many good players available. Here are still who's available. I never did take Walter Nolan off the board, my guy from Old Miss, who I think just has
Did
a
you
really
say
high
Old Miss?
Did I?
Oh, Greg.
Shemar Stewart. We haven't even.
I know. Shemar Stewart's got to go. We got to get him up higher.
Will Johnson is still available.
Yeah, I know where I want.
For any team out there.
I know where I want.
Jahdae Barron is still available for any team out there. The secondary running backs, Travion Henderson and Omarion Hampton, is available. I'm going to do something which shouldn't be allowed to do, and you guys cannot allow it. I'm looking at Eric in the back, and I'm looking at Jordan. Are there any reverse gears in this truck? Because I really...
You want to take backseat?
I love the fit of Kenneth Grant, I love the Kenneth Grant fit.
Put your Ole Miss guy in
with
Pittsburgh.
the Chargers, because Kenneth Grant, one of Jim Harbaugh's favorites. I love him with the Chargers, and then so I put Walter Nolan in at Pittsburgh. Are there reverse gears in this
No,
truck?
I'm giving the Chargers Omarion Hampton.
Ooh, okay. Then
Yeah.
there's no reverse gears.
Yeah.
This is what happens when two people draft together. I got a big thumbs down.
Eric literally said, "Hey, please don't loop me in on this because my mic isn't connected today."
It wasn't Eric.
What did you do?
It was Gavin who gave me a big thumbs down. I don't know.
Good on you, Gavin. Stay strong
He's a Chargers
back there.
fan, I believe, and maybe he.
Hey, what do you think of Omarion Hampton?
Thumbs up or thumbs down? He does not want another running back, but that is fun, and that is something Daniel Jeremiah has kind of hinted at, maybe another running back there. But man, they're passing on some guys in the trenches. Okay, the Packers are up. They're a team that has been connected to Maxwell Hairston, the Kentucky cornerback, who, if he doesn't go to the Packers, I don't think is expected necessarily to go into the first round, but he's a 4-2 cornerback, and they need a cornerback.
That defense has got to improve. It was you could see it under Jeff Hafley. You could see it in flashes. It has got to improve this year.
Okay, so we are on to the Packers. On to the Vikings. Let's give the Packers Maxwell Hairston. Now, the Vikings, I think, would love if Jahdae Barron falls to them. I think they would love a guy with some position flexibility in the secondary.
Remember that Shemar Stewart is still on the board.
I also think they would like Tracy guy. I don't think Shemar Stewart makes sense for them because I think they're good at edge after trading up for Dallas Turner last year. I also think they are the most likely team to trade back. And so if we're trying to get the mock draft right, they might not even be in the first round, but let's say they traded back. Who is a guy I could see take? Josh Simmons?
If they trade back, they need O-line help.
Josh Simmons is interesting. They have their long-term left tackle in Christian Darrisaw. Is he a guy that you would take and develop into your long-term right tackle? They have Brian O'Neill, but he is getting up there in years. I really think they go defense there. Their local guys think they go defense. Walter Nolan, they definitely could use a long-term defensive tackle, but ultimately with the value and the fit, some people have projected Malachi Starks there. I think Jahdae Barron is a very different player, but a better player and does a lot of the same things. I think this is where we stop the slide of Jahdae Barron.
Okay, let's put him there.
All right, Jahdae Barron out of Texas. One of Daniel Jeremiah's favorite players, getting some of the Brian Branch comps, guys that have slipped in the draft a little bit.
Josh Simmons. Stop.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
We're going to the Houston Texans at 25.
I'm whispering sweet OL nothings into the microphone.
So when you're putting these mocks together, it's tough because you have general ideas that you think are true, and yet when you play it out, it doesn't happen. I think generally the offensive lineman will go a little earlier than people expect, and yet that's not how our mock played out. And so that's one weakness, I think, where we could be wrong, because the Texans would be celebrating like crazy if not only is Josh Simmons available, but our guy Daniel Jeremiah said they are looking at the law firm of Booker and Banks, that he thought his strongest team connection in the entire class is them taking one of those two players. So I do lean a little towards him and the D'Amico Ryans connection with Tyler Booker here. And that would be kind of how I lean. Josh Simmons makes a lot of sense to me on paper as well, a team. But I do think They're all about swarm. They're all about the intangibles, about a guy who fits in room. Josh Simmons, to me, is kind of the Laramie Tunsil of this class, but with a patella tendon mixed in. And so,
Well, I'll tell you where he's going to go. Pick who you want for this.
Okay.
I'll tell you where he's going to
let's go Tyler Booker. You're getting annoyed with me making the picks. Let's go Tyler Booker, guard. I'm just leaning towards DJ. If he says that's his strongest connection, I'm going to go with one of them.
He's the king of knowing things and sharing them without telling you how he knows, but you just have this consistency with him. He just knows things.
He knows things.
Yeah.
The Rams are up at 26.
They are taking Josh Simmons if they
There we go.
Because Rob Havenstein is coming off a double shoulder clean out. And so you don't necessarily need to rush Josh Simmons onto the field. It would be helpful if he could play immediately, but you don't need to. And eventually they need to have someone to take over from.
I think it makes more sense for the overall health of the NFL that actually the Texans got the swarmy Alabama guard. That makes sense. And the Rams get this guy who doesn't need to get onto the field right away, a guy they're willing to take a chance on.
Keep an eye on the Rams. He already went. Keep an eye on the Rams for potential Gray Zabel team. Also, keep an eye on obviously the trade back potential. The Rams don't have a second round pick. I would imagine Les Snead wants to trade back into the second round. And I have tracked this pattern for years. Sean McVay, however much say he has over the first pick that they do have, he's probably going to want to go offensive line or skill player.
Okay. I love that. I want to show you my mock notes for every team, some suggestions that I did. It's pretty straightforward. There's only one team that was left blank. And that was just in general. I was like, I don't need to say anything about the Rams. I don't need to prep for the Rams or think about the Rams. Who cares? Jordan is going to know way more. So I left that blank for you. The Ravens are up. I love that pick for the Rams. And I think they would love how this draft fell. I really think they would look traitsy defensive players in general. Malachi Starks is there, and yet I think it's obvious to me that they would take either Shemar Stewart or Walter Nolan in this scenario. Odafe Owe, we heard, is maybe available. I think Shemar Stewart is very much the Odafe Owe of this draft class. You look at their defensive tackles, they're definitely better there, and they have long-term guys. Now, do they have a guy quite like Walter Nolan? Maybe you would say, Nnamdi Madubuike is similar-ish just as a pass-rushing defensive tackle. I think Shemar Stewart, based on their depth chart, makes more sense for them.
Yeah, let's put him here.
All right, let's
go.
The
other name to watch here to bring up, obviously Ronnie Stanley coming back is great, but Kelvin Banks potentially kicking inside could help them.
Yes, and the way the draft has fallen, we've gotten to the Lions. I was thinking for them, offensive linemen, if the right person fell to them, edge if the right person fell to them, really pass rusher if the right person, and maybe wide receiver. So maybe this is where Kelvin Banks' slide stops. I actually think that makes a lot of sense.
Could I just throw another name out?
Sure.
Emeka Egbuka. I think is such a fit here, culture fit, somebody who is on, again, a captain's track, somebody who just has drawn rave reviews for how much he can do, how much football he knows. That, to me, if you're changing coordinators and you're trying to make sure that this offense doesn't lose any juice, I could see them going, I could see them doing everything you're saying. I could also see them picking, this could be a Hairston team too.
Interesting.
Just depending on reportedly, my colleague Dane Brugler has been reporting that they've done plenty of work on Hairston. So those are the names that I would also throw out as possible for Detroit. I like a different fit for Emeka Egbuka better, one pick later. So if you let me have.
You're going to put Egbuka on the Commanders. We can just talk about this. Interesting. They are the one team where I think they have to, and because of the way this draft is, will draft for need. And they have maybe the biggest need of any of these teams, which is their pass rush need. And I think they're going to
trade back. First of all, let me be clear on that. The Commanders. So let's pick for Lions really quick because we want to make sure to. I'll give you that one.
I struggled with it because you kind of convinced me into a potential Egbuka pick, and yet, let's go Kelvin Banks then.
Okay.
He will go off the board to the Detroit Lions.
Now, the Commanders, to be clear, I think are going to try to trade back. There's going to be a lot of teams, especially if two of the quarterbacks go already. There's going to be a lot of teams that are trying to come up into that 29 spot. I think that's sneakily a really, really good place to be for Washington, who needs to rebuild entirely a young core of players and also needs draft picks to do that. So I actually don't think that they're going to be married to a particular side of the ball. I don't think that they need to help their defense. But I think when you see them make a run like they do with like all out offense last season, I think that they are going to still draft heavy into needs with defensive players. But I just see Emeka Egbuka, and everything revolves around this quarterback in Washington. And I just see him as, again, he just fits with Terry. Like he is just a fit there.
It's thinking long term. I love it. I stood on the table for a couple that were off the radar. No one is mocking this pick, so we are giving Emeka Egbuka to the 29th pick to the Commanders. She's on a ledge.
I know.
I like it.
I'll take all the grievances.
I like it, and I could see them.
But they do really, really need defensive help. Let's be clear on that.
I like them, and because who is the edge there that would have gone? We have not drafted James Pierce. The rest of them all went. Nick Scorton, a lot of people, including Daniel Jeremiah, think might end up going in the first round. He would have been a possibility. But you're right. That Commanders, we might still get it right as a second-round pick because those teams...
I think they're going to trade back.
Giants and the Browns, though, you don't have to trade back far. If you just are trying to pick up like an extra fourth or something, that could be the type of pick. The Bills are one of the toughest teams to mock. So
I want to give the Bills a safety.
Okay, Malachi Starks is still sitting there.
So is Nick Emenwari.
Wow, neither one off the board.
I know.
To me, Starks feels more like a Bill, personally, just because versatility. There are differing views on both these guys. I think they're both a little divisive and maybe a little overrated in terms of how much they got talked about just because they're at the top of kind of a bad safety class. They could also look at cornerback. I've been talking about that throughout, but now it would maybe for value, the safeties are a little more interesting. If you want to give them a safety, let's go Malachi Starks.
Well, I disagree. I want to give him Nick Emenwari because of his speed, and they really need more juice back there. They absolutely need to improve the overall speed of their defensive backfield, and he's a 4-3 guy. He sort of is a really just field aware, very savvy player. And he dropped from the middle of the first where he's being projected quite a bit into the very bottom. And that's something that Brandon Beane will be all over.
Below Starks for what it's worth on the consensus board, 27th for Emenwari, 21st for Starks. I think those are two guys where depending on who you talk to, and I have asked about them with more teams and people than other players, you get really differing opinions. There are some people that think Emenwari have no instincts at all, that he is going to be a multi-year project, and you got to have an exact vision of how you're going to use him. I think the Bills would be a perfect team for that. There are some people that kind of think that way for Starks, too, that, man, the bad tape is really bad. Differing opinions, but he did a lot. He had some great highlight plays. Emenwari, a little less on film, more in terms of the traits. Let's give him to the Bills at number 30. The Chiefs... I put running back ? I put Nick Scorton ? For this team. Walter Nolan is still there, and man, if you weren't,
gotta get just put him.
Yeah,
there.
I'm gonna put him
get
there.
him in the first.
I actually would have pushed back harder. I think the Bills would be would love to get another defensive lineman because of the way they team build. That actually, I wish I had pushed back there, but we'll give Walter Nolan to the Chiefs, kind of as like the long-term successor for Chris Jones. Not that he's going to be that type of player, but he is in that mold of player, Chris Jones. But for now, he would be the backup or the guy next to him. And then finally, the Eagles are up on the board. I could have seen them taking Walter Nolan as well. The Chiefs, by the way, I think they could take a running back there. It wouldn't totally surprise me.
It's starting to click for me why Walter Nolan now is becoming one of your favorite.
Why?
Because you have a lot of intel on him. Some friendships that you have a lot of.
I don't get any information on Eagles, although they are a team I think that would love to see like just a talented guy. If anything, he seems almost too Jalen Carter-y, but it would be great to have two Jalen Carter. A much, the poor man's, the very poor man's.
Okay, which lineman / pass rusher / linebacker /
The funny thing is all the good ones I feel like are gone.
Yeah.
I feel like the way that we've had it fall, I almost wish we had given the Chiefs a running back and that they would take some people like Josh Connerly a lot. Would they take an offensive tackle here? I don't think so.
No, but I'm looking at like Lane Johnson, who is fantastic, had an amazing year. He is entering the most veteran years, so you have to maybe start thinking about that. Josh Connerly would need to kick over to the other side, but he was talking to so one of the Rams media people, Blaine Grisak, and Blaine, I'm sorry if I did not pronounce that correctly. He does a lot of draft stuff this time of year, and he actually spoke with Josh at the Senior Bowl and was talking about how much more comfortable he is in a little bit more of a zone-oriented running scheme. So I'm looking at maybe a guy who might take a little bit more time to develop, who is projected lower and even well into the second round, who people sit there and say, God dang it, Howie Roseman, Ariante Ursary from Minnesota.
Oh, man. That would be a stunner.
It would take some time. He needs some time. It would take some time. He's massive.
Some people, do not like his tape at all.
But you get him with the best offensive line coach in the league. He's got tools. He has size. You need to unlearn some things and relearn some things with him. But he's got time because you got Lane Johnson there. And I just have a hard time seeing Howie go elsewhere than up front.
Connerly would make more sense to me if he did, and yet I still have DJ's words ringing in my head of that this is a sneaky Mason Taylor team. He keeps putting Mason Taylor in his first 32. It's the Dallas Goddard. He always has good Eagles stuff. Now, maybe they're a second-round pick, but I kind of want to wrap with Mason Taylor.
Let's just put 3 tight ends in the first round and what? Why not?
Probably be wrong. I do feel like the other tackles would be a stretch, and I don't think the Eagles have reached for guys. They are consensus board team. If anyone is consensus board team, it is them. And the way this board fell, they didn't have one fall to them in this case. And so, all right, let's
go for it.
32nd pick, Mason Taylor.
You sound so excited.
Yeah, that one's tough. I don't feel too strong. I kind of, I'm someone that immediately after the show is over always thinks about the different things that they could have done. And I was like, oh, maybe we should have given Hampton to the Chiefs and then Nolan wrapping up to the Eagles. That makes more sense to me overall, like as a combination. We did it.
We did it.
Very excited for this draft. As we mentioned on our last show.
It's inarguable. Obviously, it's going to totally happen this way. Everything will fall this way. I do think that you threw a huge wrench into the matrix when you have Shedeur going 9. So that obviously affects the rest of the board dropping. And some of these teams, as we see, would really love for that to happen because it dropped perfectly for them.
I know.
In that case.
I hate that Omarion Hampton didn't get drafted here.
Yes, he did, by the Chargers. Greg, this is quarterback island all over again. I love it.
It's a problem. So we will be back again on Thursday night. We're going to be live. Me, Patrick Claybon, and Steve Weish. I'm really excited about that. Before we get to the draft, and this will be the last show before. I do want to mention that we've had a tough week here at NFL Daily. I think about us all as a family, and Nick Shook is such an important part of this family, and he lost his dad, Gregg Shook, on April 17th, and that's why Nick hasn't been on the shows lately, and we're just thinking about him, just reading about his dad and hearing about his dad. Like, my goal in life is to have my kids someday talk the way about me that Nick has talked about his dad, and how it's his best friend, his coach. He coached football, basketball, baseball, his daughter's basketball team. Nick has 3 sisters, and so that they're really hurting. But just to hear the love of like that relationship that he had, and even reading the obituary I found of Gregg Shook, they said, one of the best moments and memories of his whole life was getting to watch the Cavs win the title. He's a huge Cleveland sports fan with his son, Nick. So rest in peace. We should all look to try to be the man, the father that Gregg Shook was.
It is a testament to somebody who neither of us know personally, that we can understand just how special he was because of the way that Nick moves around in this world.
Right. It's amazing. You can see it every day in the way that Nick operates. And so all the best and our condolences to Nick and his sisters, Autumn, Caitlin, and Brooke. We will be back, like I said, on draft night. I'm really excited for this one. I feel as prepped as I possibly could be. Let's just get it there.
I'll do it.
What are we going to do until the
When
draft?
Gregg Rosenthal is sneaking defensive tackles into the top 32, you know football is back.
So you got to leave a little more time. You got to hit the post.
Are you coaching me on this?
I never hit it right anyways.